Hi, guys. Hey, this is 14.2 wells and springs. And this is very important when it comes to us being able to have access to our most precious resource, which is water. And so we're going to describe today um, artesian formations, which is a funny word, but very important. And then we're going to describe two land features produced when groundwater is heated beneath the surface of our earth. And so the first one we'll talk about is ordinary wells and springs. And so what's an ordinary well? I think I talked about this before when we talked about when you drill a hole into the earth and you are pulling water out of the ground. This is a well, and it can come in several forms. Here, we have wells that are like a straw that you put into the ground, and it goes very deep, and you hope you hit a fracture in the bedrock, and then it fills that entire tube full of water, and then you're able to pump water to your house. Or you have the bored well, which is a very much a much larger hole, 24 inches in diameter, and basically that hole is shallow. And the reason why they have a bigger one is you have access to more of a sand and gravel type bedrock in which water is more permeable and it flows better. And so two different types of wells. Obviously, some of us don't even use wells when it comes to getting water because we have a river that flows through, and that water is then pulled out of the river, treated, and then put into our water tower. Now, other towns around us don't have that. And so they have wells within their community that are deep wells, and they pump the water to their treatment plant and then pump it up into their water tower, and then it's delivered to houses. So again, when we have a well, we want to have it in rock that's highly permeable and has high porosity. In other words, we want that water to flow, and we can't draw it out faster than the flow, or the well will dry up, and that happens all the time. When we are pulling water out of the ground, it's just like if you're drinking a milkshake. When you drink a milkshake and you have a straw in your milkshake, that that milkshake that you're slurping up into your straw, it's using the least path of resistance to draw. And so the milkshake that goes into your straw isn't going all from the bottom and everything slows, just drops down. What it is you create a low pressure area by sucking on the straw, and then around the outside of the straw, it creates this low pressure area, and it's flowing along that area into the bottom of the straw, causing you to be able to enjoy your milkshake. Same thing with our water. As a result of drawing water into a well or a giant straw, we create this cone of depression. And basically, it's drawing from the outside, right along that side of that well in a low pressure system. And it can cause the top of the water table to do what's called a cone of depression. In other words, it dips down on both sides. And as it's doing that, it can physically cause others to go without water for a period of time if it goes below their well. So we can temporarily have a well dry up, and then it fills back up after the water's had time to flow back to it. Now, we also have areas of our ground where it dips below the water table. And if it dips below the water table, so for example, our river dips below the water table. And so our river is spring fed. In other words, water is going from the top of the water table into the river because that's the top of the water table. Now, interestingly enough, if we do have an area with a perched water table, that situation can also happen with regards to a spring, even though the water table is much, much lower. So as I was talking about here, if we look at this well right here and this well right here, this person or this community or whatever is drawing a lot of water, and you see this cone of depression. Didn't affect this well, didn't affect this well. If this, say this is an irrigation system, is pulling more water than the other two, and it pulls to where the cone of depression is below the bottom of their well, you'll run those people dry. They won't have any water. In other words, it's like having your straw halfway up in the glass and not being able to get any milkshake out. So the reality is it's very easy to run people out of water if the cone of depression goes below the bottom of their well. An artesian well, funny name, really cool idea, but basically an artesian well, due to where our water table intersects the ground. So if our water table intersects the ground and has an impermeable rock layer on the top and the bottom, you have water trapped in a box. And if that box were become exposed to where it's able to flow, and I'll show you a diagram here in a minute, this cap rock or this impermeable rock layer holds that water inside there. And what happens is it creates a pressure situation, and the water will flow naturally out of the ground, and it'll push the water out of the ground. Now, if we have an artesian formation and the water comes out of the ground, it's called an artesian spring. And the water basically pumps out of the ground and creates a water area because we've broke a hole or we have this space in the cap rock. And so here's a good example here. Our aquifer is down here and it's taking a while to flow. In other words, the permeability of the rock is slow. And so we have a higher elevation and we've created this pressure, this head pressure, causing it to push out. How does the water come from the water tower to our houses? They pump the water up in the top of the water table, which is no different than this. Here, we've got gravity working on our side and it's pushing down. As it's pushing down, it's finding its way to get down here. And if we punch a hole, then the water will flow out of the ground, out of the artesian formation all by itself. And so we call that an artesian well. Hot springs. A hot spring is where we have groundwater that's heated, and it's being heated due to either molten rock or volcanic activity. In other words, it's boiling or it's near boiling. And when it does, and it finds its way to the surface, it creates a hot spring. And there's lots of them all over the world. And it's kind of neat because it creates some formations, one of them being travertine. Now, travertine is when we have hot water that's mineral rich, and what happens is the water evaporates. And when it evaporates, no different than if you were to boil Kool-Aid in a pan or salt water in a pan. When the water evaporates, it leaves that material behind, and you have the Kool-Aid or the salt in the bottom of the pan. Now, in this case, travertine is calcite, and that calcite forms brilliantly bright white and different colored formations, but it's really cool. Another thing that's created from heating water is something called mud pot. And mud pots are when you have mud-rich, clay-rich water that are a ground that has been mixed with water, and it's like when you have a pan of mashed potatoes and you turn the heat up. It's thick, it's bubbly, and eventually those bubbles make it to the surface. And so mud pot is no more than water and mud and clay all mixed together, very thick, very viscous, and it's bubbling. The gases are escaping. Now, geysers are a little bit different. So in a geyser situation, we have an area that is open, and it's open due to dissolving of the rock or whatever, but it's filled with this calcite all around the edge of it, this evaporated material. And so what happens is you create a seal all the way around it. And as the pressure builds up, it causes the water to flash to steam at some point. And when it does, it creates where the water goes up into the air, pushes it up in the air. Very famous Old Faithful in Yellowstone National Park. There's geysers all over the world. So a hot spring, simply if the water is hot and it's been warmed by volcanic activity all throughout Yellowstone. We see this, of course. Why? Because Yellowstone is nothing more than a supervolcano that's been sleeping a long time. But anywhere we see volcanic activity, we can find these hot springs. Here's a hot spring that's so hot it's causing rich bubbling. And again, it's giving off that evaporation as it comes to the surface. Here's some travertine. Again, this is all white and it's a mineral deposit. Basically, the water has evaporated and left behind this calcite, and this calcite then forms these gorgeous travertine formations. Here is a mud pot in Yellowstone, and basically it's thick, rich, like real thick mashed potatoes, and it's bubbling. I'll put some videos on our Google Classroom for you to look at. It's pretty interesting. Old Faithful. Old Faithful is a structure below the surface of the ground, again, filled with calcite all around the edge. And basically, as the water heats up and the pressure heats up, because the bubbles can't escape, ultimately it causes our water to flash steam. And when it flashes to steam, it blows out, kind of like as if you just shuck up a 2-liter pop bottle and you twist the cap off. It comes out because that gas is that water vapor is trying to escape. This is kind of interesting. This is Morning Glory Pool. There's a number of these, and this picture really doesn't do it justice. But what you're seeing is different types of bacteria that are growing within this pool, and you've got the blue greens, and then you've got the reds or oranges. And basically, what's happening is these are temperature dependent colonies of bacteria, and so this bacteria down here is able to survive these hot temperatures. We call them thermophiles, temperature thermophile organism, and they're able to stand much hotter temperatures around the outside because it's near the surface. It's not directly in the vent itself. These other ones are able to out survive the blue greens, and I think it's really gorgeous. It's a neat formation. A little bit better pool. Our picture of Morning Glory. Again, you can see the different colorations of the different bacteria, and it gives it this really cool look. So that's all of 14.2, again, talking about wells and springs. I can't say thank you enough for you guys being awesome. I appreciate you. I appreciate all you do, not only for our school, our community, our world. You guys are the difference. And I can't say thank you enough for watching, and I hope you have a great day.